You know, some places are just buildings, but others hold stories so dark they seem to soak right into the walls, inspiring some of the greatest horror stories ever told. Today, we're checking into the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, the real-life place so terrifying it gave Stephen King the nightmare that became The Shining.
All right, so picture this. The year is 1974. A young writer, not yet the global superstar we know today, a guy named Stephen King. He and his wife check into this grand, isolated hotel. They're the very last guests of the season, and they're only staying for one night. They have no idea that this single night is about to change literary history forever.
So this is where our story really begins, with that one single, terrifying night. A nightmare so vivid, so real, that it became the entire blueprint for one of the most iconic horror stories of all time.
And the key to this whole thing? It all comes down to room 217. Just a number on a door, right? Well, for Stephen King, it became the epicenter of a darkness that he just couldn't shake.
I mean, King walked into the perfect setup for a ghost story. The hotel was literally closing down around them for the winter. He and his wife were the only guests. Can you imagine that? These huge, long corridors, completely empty, completely silent, except for the old pipes groaning in the walls, sounding like something breathing. It was pure, perfect isolation.
In that night, in that room, King had this unbelievably intense nightmare. He dreamed about his own young son running terrified through those empty hotel hallways, being chased by a fire hose that had come to life, just twisting and writhing after him. He said he woke up in a cold sweat, and in that moment, it was like the entire plot for The Shining just downloaded right into his brain.
But here's the thing. This is where it gets really crazy. King just thought he'd had a really bad dream in a super creepy hotel. He had absolutely no clue that he had just spent the night in a place that already had decades of reports of being genuinely, legitimately haunted.
So, to really understand where these stories come from, you've got to go back to the beginning. We need to talk about the man who built the hotel, Freeland Oscar Stanley, a guy whose own life was basically a story about cheating death. Get this. In 1903, doctors pretty much gave him a death sentence. They said he had advanced tuberculosis and only a few months left to live. So he moves to the mountains of Colorado for the clean air and ends up living to be 91 years old. It's an incredible story of survival. And Stanley didn't just survive, he absolutely thrived. This was a brilliant guy, the co-inventor of the famous Stanley steamer car. He took this second chance at life and just poured all of his ambition into building this incredible, luxurious hotel. It was a modern marvel at the time, even bringing the first electric lights to the entire area. But the hotel's story isn't just about the man who built it. It's also about the people who worked there and, well, in some cases, the people who never really left. It's time to meet the original ghost of room 217. Her name was Elizabeth Wilson. Back in 1911, she was a head housekeeper. One night, a gas lamp exploded right there, in the very same room Stephen King would later stay in. She was badly injured, but she survived and kept working at the hotel for years. But according to countless guests, her spirit is still on duty.
Okay, so this timeline just lays it all out perfectly. The accident happens to Elizabeth Wilson in 1911. Then, for decades, the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, guests in that specific room start reporting bizarre things, an unseen helper tidying up, folding their clothes. And then, in 1974, Stephen King checks right in with no idea. He didn't just find a story, he walked right into the middle of one.
But here's the deal. The presence in room 217 isn't alone, not even close. The haunting of the Stanley is way bigger than just one room. So let's take a quick tour of the hotel's other permanent residence. First stop, the 4th floor. For years, guests and staff have reported hearing the unmistakable sounds of children laughing, shouting, and running up and down the halls. But every single time they go to look, the hallways are completely empty.
Next up, the concert hall. Late at night, when the room is locked and dark, people have heard music coming from the grand piano. The belief is that it's the founder himself, F.O. Stanley, still putting on a show for his guests.
And in the grand ballroom, people report hearing the faint sounds of a ghostly party, the murmur of conversation, clinking glasses, and music, all echoing long after the living have gone to bed for the night. So what does all this add up to today? Well, this isn't just some old, dusty history. It's a living legacy.
The hotel's paranormal reputation has been growing for over 100 years, and honestly, it's stronger now than ever before.
And maybe the most compelling evidence of all is just how consistent the reports are. Over decades, you have thousands of different people, many who know nothing about the hotel's past, reporting the exact same things. Their suitcases being unpacked, sudden cold spots in a warm room, lights turning on and off, and that creepy, unmistakable feeling that you're not alone.
Today, the Stanley doesn't shy away from its spectral fame. It totally embraces it. It's been all over TV shows like Ghost Hunters. Room 217 is one of the most requested hotel rooms in the entire country, booked out months, sometimes years in advance. This haunted reputation isn't just a spooky story. It's a huge driver of the entire local economy.
So, in the end, the Stanley Hotel doesn't really give us any easy answers. Instead, it just leaves us with this one deep and pretty unsettling question. Can a place actually absorb the memories, the energy, the very essence of the lives that were lived inside its walls? The Stanley doesn't say. It just waits and watches and keeps its secrets.